Welcome back to Bread and Butter, serving up the basics for Hearthstone Improvement. This is episode 150, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Pylet. Pylet, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and we have not one but two wonderful returning guests. First off, we have JustAGuy. JustAGuy, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Tito.
Fantastic. It's been a while
I'm
since
doing okay. Great's an overstatement. I'm all right. Hi, Pylet.
Hi.
I'm all right.
And apparently, I'm going to have to keep the show on the rails tonight. Speaking of keeping shows on the rails, we have Daniel Stormraige Sheldon. Daniel, how are you?
I was feeling good, and then I saw JustAGuy join the call. I don't remember agreeing to sharing time with him. So doing less good, and or you may hear from my agent about this afterwards.
Your life choices are in question to begin with, so let's.
That is true.
I just love how we've just started and we've already had two people complaining about someone else being on the podcast now tonight. We're off to a great start.
Well, this should be a lot easier to edit than last week when we had the entire crew on of Born to Be Wild, because that was I get to the point where I'm like, you know what, I am done trying to get crosstalk out of this. I'm just gonna let it go. And
that episode went like 2.5 hours.
It did, and it was fun. I enjoyed it, and that's all that matters. So, Stormraige, what have you been doing inside of Hearthstone lately?
In Hearthstone, I've been playing mostly Battlegrounds. Battlegrounds has become kind of my primary game mode, so climbing a little bit in that. I still love the Time Warp Taverns a ton. I think they're super fun. In Standard, I've been playing almost exclusively No Minion Demon Hunter. Demon Hunter is my favorite class, and the Eternal Hold, where I will almost always get an Illidary Inquisitor or the Shopkeeper or the Shop Peddler or Magtheridon. It's just a bunch of fun options, and I think it's a very, very fun deck with a lot of interesting choices to make. And climbing a little bit, I'll probably end up doing a legend push this month. We'll see. I'm not close right now because I've not been paying a lot of time or attention. And then I've also been playing some Tavern Brawl. The naughty list Tavern Brawl is super fun. You make a terrible deck, give it to your opponent, and see who can make the worst deck. It's super fun, and I've enjoyed it a lot.
Fantastic. And how about yourself, JustAGuy? What have you been up to in the world of Hearthstone?
I'm pretty much consistent month to month. I usually dabble in a little bit of everything. I don't put in a huge amount of time on anything, but I climb standard ladder. I'm getting close to Diamond 1. Diamond 5. Battlegrounds, which has been reasonably fun with the Time Warp. So that's been enjoyable. I agree that the naughty list Tavern Brawl has been a little bit of arena here and there. I keep myself busy, but I play when I can and try to sort of stay consistent if I'm able.
Fantastic. How about yourself, Pylet? It's been a busy week for you, so I don't think there's been much Hearthstone, but has there been any?
There's not been much Hearthstone. Played a couple games here and there just to try to clear enough dailies to not fall behind, and then had a THL match on Saturday where I was trying to play just the good decks because I didn't have time to play anything else. And as I was making the lineup and looking at what I thought they were going to bring, I'm like, this is terrible into this. I'm like, and I don't feel like playing these. So I went completely off radar and brought Arcane Mage and Quest Hunter. And what else did I bring? Death Rattle, Death Knight, and then I did bring the Shaman, which ended up being the deck that lost all 3 games for me. It was rough, but I did listen. I attempted to listen to the advice we give on this podcast, and I fought the tilt that I was getting because in 3 games of Shaman, only 1 game did I play a card before turn 4, and I never saw Hagatha in any of the 3 games. It was not fun. I lost in my own deck. Not that they played poorly, I just couldn't do anything. It is a little frustrating because I think I was in a good spot most of those games, even being so far behind. I just couldn't make up for the fact that I was playing 2 opponents, one of them being my own deck. So little frustrating, especially because if I would have won, then we would have won the week as a team. But yeah, just kind of chilling. I'm in Platinum now. Had my coin concede coaching with Wicked Good today, where we started out playing the Dominion Demon Hunter, and we did not understand how to play that deck. We went 0-3 and said we're gonna move off of this for a little bit, and I will come back to this later. Switched over to Cliff Dive, and that went much better.
Oh, fantastic! And no ties this week, so
no, I didn't get close enough to tie. I'm still looking for. I don't know if there's an official record for that, but I'm looking for it. So I've tied 2 games this season.
Very, very nice. So I also had my THL match on Monday, and my opponent wanted to play early. I was like, that's fine. So we played on Monday, and I'm looking, and I add him as a friend. He's rank 11. So I'm like, great, this is fun. I think I got myself in my own head a little bit, but I took him 5 games, and I should have won that last game, I think. But I played probably too passively because I was worried about them getting through. So I was playing more taunts instead of actually, playing the minions that really would have helped me win. So lots to learn from that. But I was happy to take 2 out of 3 in that situation anyway. And I thought I played for the most part okay. Pylet, as always, has thoughts and questions on some of my choices, but that's okay. Outside of that, I'm still not legend, but I've been playing exclusively pretty much Corona Druid. I am absolutely loving that deck. I'm getting better at that deck. I got to Diamond 1, 2 stars, and then I was back down to Diamond 3. Right now, I think I'm like Diamond 2, 2 stars. So we'll get there tomorrow and finish that up and go from there. But I'm having an absolute blast with that deck. It's just, there's a lot you can do, and it's a lot of fun. But JustAGuy, what have you been doing outside of the game of Hearthstone?
Oh, good Lord. Life is, couldn't be much more entertaining out here. Orange County and Christmas, just the darn temperatures drop into the 50s in the evening. It's just brutal. I'm just trying to get through the holidays. That sounds so down. Not get through. It's, you try to keep up. You try to enjoy them. Christmas always comes so fast. It's like Thanksgiving's here and you're like, oh, it's the day after, and you sort of want to start gearing up for the holidays. And then before you know it, it's 4 days till Christmas. Just trying to enjoy it, honestly, trying to slow things down, trying to take a day and not worry about a million things that you have to get to, which is hard to avoid sometimes with work and everything else. And just trying to pause every now and then and slow it down and try and make it last. But yeah, it's been fine. Work stuff. We've been just trying to keep up with life as usual and the distractions that these types of things offer as an alternative to what you normally have to focus on in life, which a lot of times is really your. This is nice. I appreciate the invite to be here.
Oh, we appreciate having you. I figured it had been a little while. It's time to have you on. Same thing with Daniel.
Episode 150. So, I only do milestone episodes of any podcast. It just sort of becomes the way it's always worked for me. So, yes, by the way, congratulations on that. That's honestly an absolute achievement and an absolute example of your intensity and your dedication to be.
Well, thank you. It's been a lot of fun. I'm really I figured this one's kind of one I downplay a little bit. And actually, I didn't intentionally invite you on for 150. I just hadn't thought about it in a while, and I just said, "Hey, let's have Daniel and JustAGuy on." It's been a while. Pylet just immediately thought I was having you guys on because it was 150.
Well, the first pod I ever made any kind of appearance on was over here. So yeah. So it was a milestone episode of Blizzlet that someone reached out to me, and I wrangled my daughter into doing a short video piece, which is hard to get her to do. But
episode 200, if memory serves.
I believe it was. And that was actually a lot of fun. I think that still, I think, stands up pretty well.
And that was pretty funny because it was right at the time I think you had posted a video of your first video that kind of took off a little bit, and you became kind of a local legend among podcasts like Blizzlet.
Yeah, it wasn't a video. I hadn't done videos at that point. It was actually my resume had hit a little bit when I posted that, and then the one that sort of went off just before was My good Lord, they go back into the big hits. When I posted the kids schedule, which
Yes.
had them with 2 lunches and rolling around in a room full of money. And yes, I posted that. That was something that got a lot of traction.
And Blizzard was super happy that you did it, and there were no repercussions, and everybody went, "Good job, JustAGuy."
They thought it was great. I think I was attempting to apply for some sort of social media position at the time, and started actually messaging the game director at the time, and he's like, "We can't hire you. You leaked their schedules." I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize that would be a problem." No, that's just par for the course. But no, it's been a long. How many episodes has that been now? So I can.
It's been about 232 episodes since then.
We're creeping up on 5 years ago.
Yep.
Yep, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the COVID.
It was an interesting.
So Daniel, you're coming close to 450 episodes, and that's very exciting as well. But what have you been doing outside of the game?
Outside of the game, I've been doing some Mass Effect Andromeda for the other podcast that I am on that is not a Hearthstone podcast. Also, Marvel Rivals is a real good game, and I've been playing that quite a bit. I finished up this week all of my grading for my final project, so I'm very excited. I get to just relax for a brief while, enjoy the holidays, and I posted all the grades yesterday, and I was waiting for students to email me of how dare your grade be this, and I haven't gotten any of those yet. So I am, fingers crossed, very hopeful, but it has been a busy time, but a very good time. And been some moving in my personal life, and all of which has been excellent stuff, and it's been a pretty good few weeks.
And how is Tally?
Tally is great. Tally is my dog, and she is an absolute delight, and also a terrible menace, depending on the day and the hour, and whether or not she's had her treat or snack.
I've heard you describe Stevie the same way, so.
No, you have not. No, you have not.
And how is Steve? I forgot to ask.
Oh, she's doing fine. She's same general description I assume would apply to most pets. Hi, kitty. Behind Pylet. She's delightful, and we're best buds, and she's a menace. And her absolute addiction to wanting me to vacuum all the time is the terrifying. No, I posted a couple of videos here and there. The dog is obsessed with the vacuum, and it is a battle, and she wants to fight it every day. And she thinks that I apparently vacuum every 15 or 20 minutes. That
sounds right.
In her mind, that's the normal schedule she's expecting. So, yeah, no, it's a battle. It's vicious. I will.
Well, from our conversation at the beginning before the podcast went live, that's not entirely inaccurate about how much you vacuum.
Here, as I'm guesting briefly over at my kid's house, yeah, the need to vacuum is, well, the dog also has so much hair, and it doesn't ever want to stay on her body, and she's very much against being groomed. So Cora actually took her to the vet. She was supposed to have blood drawn as a follow-up to some issues, but she's doing okay. And the vets refused to draw blood because apparently in their notes they said her flexibility was very good, too good, and the teeth and the growling were apparently a concern. So we just won't do that now. Yeah, you have to tip a groove. If you want to get her nails clipped, you have to tip in the 6.
And how about yourself, Pylet? What have you been up to outside of the game?
Similar to Stormraige, finished up last week of school before break, which was crazy busy. I was constantly gone until 9:30 each night because I had 2 concerts, a dress rehearsal, and 2 pep band basketball games. So finished that up and then crashed this weekend. which feels great, other than the normal, like, being super busy and then everything catches up to you and then you feel sick afterwards. So I've been fighting a bunch of junk in my head all weekend. But I did finish Act 2 of Expedition 33 last night after Blizzlet community game night. I'm like, I was so close beforehand. I'm like, I'm going to finish this because I need to get to the end of this. And that story is incredible. I'm very excited for Squelch to play it, because I think you three are very much going to enjoy the story.
I am so excited.
It's very good.
Is that the next game?
It's not the next game. It is a game at some point in the future within the next calendar year, probably, hopefully. I never know what game we're playing next until we're playing the game. And Dano says,
thought
this
Mass
is the
Effect
game we're
was
playing
charted
now.
into 2027. I thought you weren't going to finish.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to a lot of Squelch lately because the shift in format, and I'm not playing the games and whatnot. And I popped in today. Last time I listened to it, they were talking about Mass Effect, and I think this is the first time I've listened in like 6 to 8 months, and they were talking about Mass Effect. So,
There
that's
are
about right.
several
that tracks.
Mass Effects.
There was
So-
Xmas Effect last year that turned into Xmas January and Xmas February, and now we're back to Xmas Effect.
fantastic.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that, because it's hard for me to stay focused on the story in a game a lot of times. I'm normally someone to where I'll pay attention for a while, and then I'll start just clicking through dialogue just because I want to get into the gameplay loop. And I stop clicking through dialogue, and I especially stop clicking through to speed up like the voice acting, which is not normal for me. The voice acting is very good. There's a lot of twists and turns to the story. It's very fun.
Nice. And as far as me, it's been very quiet, just working and as Steve, getting through the holidays. It can be very stressful. And if you are someone out there that doesn't have the holiday spirit and it's a lot for you, you're not alone. It is what it is. And we'll get through it and we'll start the new year pretty soon. I also went to the Yankee Candle Factory this weekend with my kid and my grandkid, which is basically a big warehouse of candles that the Yankee Candles that you see in stores they sell, but they also have things where you can like dip your own candles and make your candles and make your own fragrances, and they have like a little Santa village and whatnot. So it's right near where I went to college at UMass Amherst. So it's kind of nice, always nice to kind of get back into that area. But outside of that, nothing really interesting. So it's been a while since either of you been on. So I thought, normally we have a return guest and we just kind of like go into whatever topics we're going to go into and we skip the interview or we do something different. But since we haven't really had you guys on in a while, I figured maybe we do a little interview, but not necessarily the same interview we do every week, because usually we're kind of just focused on really getting to know the person on a base level. But I figured we just kind of ask a little bit about just general things. So we're going to start with Daniel today. So, Daniel, we brought up this thing Blizzlet a few times. What is Blizzlet, and why should people listen?
Well, I don't know if everybody should, but I'll describe the podcast and you can make your own judgment call. Blizzlet is a podcast that is sometimes Hearthstone, most times not, which is to say a often R-rated or adult-oriented podcast where tangentially we sometimes mention the video game Hearthstone. I do my best to talk about it as often as I can, and my two co-hosts of Smarms and Ted do their very best to talk about anything else other than Hearthstone. Oftentimes, topics related might be the attractiveness of various monsters, the popular book series Dungeon Crawler Carl. Who's to say what will be? I know I will want it to be Hearthstone, and it will so rarely ever be.
Well, that brings up my next question, and there's a little setup for this one, but Blizzlet started out, when you started it, it was the hot takes in esports, and it has gone in a very different direction since then.
Yeah.
So you've built up this show that's, I would say, not only just unique to Hearthstone podcast, but I'd say it's kind of unique to gaming podcasts in general. And you have a very nice community that you have built around the show. And we just had a community game night last night, which is always a lot of fun. And while I'm sure that you probably wouldn't change a thing about where things have gone and what your community you have and all that, do you ever wish you had a more serious Hearthstone podcast?
No, not really. because the way that I engage with Hearthstone is generally at this point in my life not a serious engagement. Like, I play a good amount of Hearthstone. I try to do my best to be pretty good at it, but it's not a game where I could see myself playing 8 hours a day. And there was a time where I could see myself doing that and grinding the ranks and getting as high into Legend as I possibly could and all that jazz. But that's just not where I'm at right now. And I really love making goofs and jokes. And one of my favorite things is making people laugh, because I think that, not to get like too down in the dumps, but I think it's pretty hard for some people to find that joy nowadays, because there's a lot going on in the world and in people's lives. And so if I can get people to forget about that for 20, 30 minutes within a podcast, I will happily take that.
Well, I have a question. Do you think, given what you just said, do you think that you would still be playing a lot of Hearthstone if you didn't have a podcast about it?
Oh, no. Not even a little bit. 100%. If I did not have a podcast about Hearthstone, I would not be playing Hearthstone. I might be playing some Battlegrounds here or there, but I exclusively play Standard at this point. Not exclusively. I enjoy Standard, but like I would not be playing Standard at the rate that I do if there was not a podcast involved.
Fair enough. And you've already kind of gone through this once. You have another podcast you're on that used to be a Hearthstone podcast, but is no longer Hearthstone. Tell us about Squelch.
Yeah, so Squelch used to be Squelch, another Hearthstone podcast back when there were like 40 different Hearthstone podcasts. And then it became Squelch, budget video game book club. And then it became Squelch, an indie video game book club. And then it became Squelch, a video game book club. And so we will pick a game and we'll play through about 4 or 6 hours each week, talk about the narrative and the plot that happens, and then our overall thoughts about whether or not we like it. And the goal being that we take a much deeper dive into these games than I think your traditional video game review podcast does, because we'll spend probably 6 or 8 weeks on a game and talking about every detail of it. And we try to play, generally speaking, games that are either frequently on sale for under $20 or games that really stand out for one reason or another. So we've played all of the Mass Effects. We've played classic games like Chrono Trigger. We played the first Hades. We've done Stranger Things. We've done one of my all-time favorite games, Return to the Obra Dinn, which is an absolutely fantastic game. We just finished the Dragon Age series. Mostly, we have a couple, specifically Dragon Age 1, Dragon Age 2, and Dragon Age Inquisition. We're playing Veilguard later in this year, and it's just a bunch of fun. Me, Matt, and Dano all hang out and chat, and it's a good time.
And you missed the one, was it Life is Strange? Is that the name of it?
Yeah.
That's one of your...
I think that's what Stranger Things was supposed to be.
It sure was. I said the word strange, and I assumed that I'd get the rest of it correct.
We got you.
Thank you.
Okay. I was confused because of like you're like, that's one of your favorite games. That's why I started playing it, was from your recommendation. Now, just question on that. You, at the end of every time you get through a game, you guys have been ranking the games you've played as far as your favorite. What is your top 3 now for your 3 games that you've played?
My top 3 games right now are very silly, and it's not particularly fair to the games that we've ranked, but my top 3 games: number 3, Mass Effect 1, number 2, Mass Effect 2, number 1, Mass Effect 3.
Fair.
You that really tracks. Did a nice job.
That tracks.
There's a lot of variety in the top 3 for sure.
Hey, the heart wants what the heart wants. You also have just started a new Substack. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so I kind of hinted at this earlier that like things are difficult for a lot of people. So I started a Substack specifically that is about Hearthstone, and the way that I will open it up with like some story or something that I have either thought about or pondered about, or something that has happened to me in the last week. And so I'll open with that. I'll attempt to tie it in, usually pretty lazily, to Hearthstone at some point in time. And then I'll talk about something that I really liked from Hearthstone that week, something I thought was frustrating, and then something that I thought was extremely good for Hearthstone that week. And then I end it with 10 things that I really love, either about life or Hearthstone or something along those lines, because I really wanted to do my best to bring some more positivity into the video game space, because I think it is really easy to rail against the game, rail against the developers and all those things. And that's not what I was interested in, and that's what I had found myself doing a lot. is like, why have we not had nerfs or changes to this meta? I hate this meta so much. Why are quests so bad? And I was like, wait, hold up. Let me try and have something a little bit more positive, so that way I can think about this game that I know and love in a more positive light. And it's been pretty effective for me personally. I do engage in Hearthstone in a much healthier and more fun level.
Awesome. That's a really good way to do it, I think. So, one final question, and this is kind of selfish for me because I didn't want to make a big deal of 150. I'm not going to, but in my own personal mind, I'm thinking about, hey, some of the milestones we've had and some of the positive things we've had. We had a dev interview, we've done a card reveal, we've had on world champions. It's been a ride so far in a short period of time. Uh, you've done this for a lot longer than not only I have, but a lot of people have. So, is there a moment or particular moments that really kind of mean more to you than some of the others that for as a content creator is there anything that particularly stands out?
Yeah, there's quite a few moments that I always think about as a content creator. I think a lot of our milestone episodes have been really significant or interesting one way or another, and I've always been very appreciative of those. I also really love, I think one of my favorite moments is a couple years ago, JustAGuy hosted a little pre-BlizzCon event at his house where I got to hang out with a number of other content creators and got to hang out with his kids a little bit. And it was just a really, really fun time. And it was one of those where it's like, oh yeah, this really does feel like a community. And it's really fascinating to have all these people in one place at the same time and just hanging out and having a good time and like genuinely caring about each other. And then probably my last moment is I hosted a very silly thing of a BlizzCon that wasn't BlizzCon in Pocatello called BlizzLetCon, where like 10 people flew from across the country and we had a mini celebration of the Blizzlet podcast and mostly just hung out and played games, and it was a great time. So there's a lot of events. Many of them are just really great, but I just like getting to engage with the community as often as I do.
Very, very nice. Now, just a guy. Time to get to know you a little bit better. If for those that don't know. So, for those that don't know, who are you?
I'm good lord. I'm the older gamer dude who ended up falling into this odd space after I was convicted and had to do court-ordered community work. No, I ended up doing this oddly because my kids are both Hearthstone developers. So I have two children. Boy, it's been a while since I've had to. I have my daughter Cora is the Hearthstone design lead. My son Sage is on the Hearthstone initial design team. Given enough time, Cora will be game director. Sage will probably take over the majority of the design work as well. It'll just take a little time, but they're getting. And I ended up getting dragged into it sort of because of how their careers ended up going. Obviously, I've had a lot of influence on the interest that evolved over time, which ended up putting them on the path to the careers that they currently have. So I'm somebody who ended up as a big fan of both of my kids and really supportive. And I would take Cora when she was casting back in the day, and when she, got the opportunity to cast with the actual Hearthstone tour and dream hacks and everything else. And then she ended up getting hired by Blizzard. My son came 2 years later where he got the opportunity to apply for the same position. And as I've said, I couldn't be prouder or more annoyed with my children. So it's a balance, but that's me. So I've tried to sort of engage a little bit with a little irony, a little humor in being able to connect with my kids. And I had done a number of videos and posts, and I've gotten away from it lately because I'm trying to figure out where I want to put effort and some of the things I've been doing I enjoyed, but I wasn't sure I wanted to just sort of keep doing it. So I'm still trying to reassess. And otherwise, I'm just sort of a really, I think, unique perspective on the community and on the game, because I'm a casual gamer. I'm never going to be top tier. I'm never going to be somebody who is going to, try and grind his way into the Hearthstone Championship Tour. But I do see a little bit behind the curtain that not everybody is privy to, and it does give me a little bit of a different perspective, I think, on the game and on the community and on the development and on, Blizzard itself and the leadership and Team 5 in general. So I do think I have a little bit of an unusual sort of view of things than most.
Well, and you did mention that you're very proud of your children, as most parents are. In particular with Hearthstone, what are some of your proudest moments for each of them as developers, or maybe even before they became developers as creators, when, like, as Cora was doing all that?
I mean, obviously, the standard answer of I'm proud of my kids if they had nothing to do with Hearthstone. I'm proud of my kids because at heart, despite all of my grousing and annoyance, my kids are really, really, and hopefully I had a small part to play in that. My daughter was, I'll give you the quick rundown. My daughter was a broadcast communications major. She graduated from North Central College in 3 years with a degree. And I expected that she was going to be at some downtown Chicago radio station grabbing coffee for the on-air. Yeah. And then at some point, Blizzard did a So You Think You Can Cast competition where they put out a stock game footage and invited people to cast over it, send it in, and see if you actually had any ability. And she was one of 3 or 4 people, might have been 5 or 6, but a couple of them faded into memory, along with like Raven and Sottle at the time, that they brought out to California and they had them actually cast out. And that turned into a, wow, you're really good at this. Let's go ahead and keep hiring you. And that seemed to be where her career was going. And then at some point, there was an opening on the Blizzard development team. And somebody reached out to her and said, you really should apply. And she's like, well, I really don't have any background in that. I thought I'd just be doing this. And they went, no, you really should apply. And she applied. And out of, believe me, thousands of people who apply for these amazingly coveted positions, she got hired. And that was awesome. And my son had been finishing up college and he was going into graphic arts and design. And he was certainly as into the game and actually was the one who sort of pointed Hearthstone to Cora when it was first invented. And 2 years after Cora got hired, an opening came up. They encouraged him to apply. And regardless of what the community likes to somehow believe nepotism was involved in all of this, he got hired because he's incredible, because his absolute ability when it comes to design and gaming and everything that's involved with being able to create the way you need to be an initial designer on this game, and his ability to play the game at such a high level that you can be a really, really good final design. It's all part of what he's just innately capable of being able to do. And he got hired. And so my kids have been doing that now. So I ended up, we lived in Chicago when COVID finally let up and they were returning to work. My wife and I talked about it and decided that we would not be happy seeing my kids 2 or 3 times a year, and sold my house, got rid of 90% of everything I'd ever accumulated over my entire lifespan. And we moved out to California so that we could at least sort of have a decent view of my kids' life. So as much as I complain, I certainly put myself in the position to be here so that I could complain about the things that my kids annoy me. But that's okay. That was what I sort of was.
Well, speaking of complaining, I don't think you consider yourself a content creator, but you do occasionally put out some funny videos.
I 100% consider myself to be a content creator. I have created content, therefore I meet all the criteria for content creator.
Okay, there you go. But so how hard is it for you to walk the thin line of being a parent of developers and being funny or satirical about the game? And what's a piece of content you're most proud of?
It's very difficult. And honestly, that's become more of a challenge over the years, because the game was fun and the kids were involved with the game, and that was great. And it does give me a chance to talk to them and get an idea of how things are. And I was doing some things that, were fun, and I tried to stay very positive, and I tried to keep things very light and satirical for the most part. I have pointed out the fact that a couple of things that I posted at the time were taken seriously that I thought were just so down the road of being completely absurd that nobody would ever think that I was being serious. But that happened more than once, and I'm sure I pushed the envelope a little bit too far. I had one of the big followers when I was actively posting on social media. Was the Hearthstone PR team that they were keeping track of their actual PR lead was following me and had a direct line to Cora, who would be like, "Your dad's using logos and stuff. Please, could you talk to him?" And so I'm sure there were I had some stern talking to at times. Don't do that. So I certainly didn't want to embarrass my kids, but I thought I was doing, some things that were fun and enjoyable and certainly wouldn't be criticized for the most part. As time's gone on, as the years go, I didn't want to just keep doing sort of goofy, silly stuff. And I'm having a real hard time trying to figure out how to do more serious content because I know too much. And I take things a little too personal. That, when you guys see what's going on with pets and everybody gets really upset because it seems like such an absolute cash grab, and it just seems like the monetization is all, what the heck are you thinking? And the way they integrated sort of the casino aspect and the game was really, I couldn't have agreed more, but it's really difficult for me to go on a pod and criticize unnamed people that my kids work with and for. So it does make a challenge to do. And then, as is the case, which I'm sure I've been self-employed for 30 years. I haven't worked for demand in a really long time. And I spent 10 years before that in just the worst, horrible, most abusive industry ever. So I've seen both sides. I don't get corporate environments very well. I never really worked in one for the most part. My kids are dealing with the stuff that I'm sure is very normal in most workplaces. But I have issues with how they often get treated in that sort of, what the hell are you thinking, corporate environment. And it's difficult for me to talk about it because, again, not really my place, not really something I want to do with, talking about details of things that, certainly aren't privy to anybody else. And it's really just more family stuff where the kids complain about their jobs sometimes. And I'm trying to be sympathetic and supportive. And obviously I do take it personally at times when things, and that happens with the community too. Things are negative, and like Daniel said, they go after the devs when the meta is unpleasant. My daughter's been targeted on levels that you guys would never believe. Attacks and personal contacts and everything. So it is more personal to me. And I do have a different viewpoint than a lot of people do because I've got that connection. So, and I still struggle at times trying to figure out how to process it and how to sort of, filter it and work through it. So that's something I'm still challenged by.
But what is the piece of content that you are most proud of or that you've enjoyed, even if it wasn't your most successful piece?
So the obvious one that was a absolutely 100% unexpected thing was the card reveal that I did several years ago for reasons I can't understand. Alkali Lake at the time thought that it was a really interesting idea to reach out to me without any communication with my daughter to see if I would do a card reveal that they then sprung on her while she was doing a live interview. And it went over wonderfully. I think that what I put together for the card reveal, while I think it was really, really good and clever, was completely secondary to the entire setup and how it was dumped on her. And that's something that memorably is I think has been described as the greatest card reveal in Hearthstone history, and I'm not going to argue about it. I've described it that way. I think there have been other people who have also said so.
I think you might be underselling yourself on that one.
You
It
think?
might be the greatest card reveal in any card game history.
Oh, I appreciate that. I didn't want to say something that would just be dismissed out of hand because it sounded so over the top, but you could be correct. And that was probably the best, not the most clever thing that I've done. A lot of times the things that you think are really, really funny and really clever often don't land, but that's often, you know, like you said, Tito, you're at 150 episodes. And if you're happy with it, if you're proud of it, then that's really all that matters. And a lot of the stuff that I put out, I was happy with it. The kids won't watch any of it. My children, you know, I'll be like, hey, did you see the song that I came up with for your expansion, Sage? And he's like, that's okay. When I'm gone, they'll be able to go back and watch it, you know, a handful of stupid videos and be like, oh yeah, that was Dad. That's okay.
So speaking of that was Dad, when you play Hearthstone, you have two really great Hearthstone minds behind you that know the cards and know how to play, especially, you know, how to play the game really well. They both have been doing well. What are mistakes that you make in the game that drive them crazy?
Pretty much playing the game drives them crazy. Being connected to the game at all drives them crazy. My daughter is very easy to sort of, you know, get a little bit of coaching from and discuss, you know, strategies and decks and everything. It's, oh, try this one. I think you'd like that. There's never been an issue with that, and that's been going back to, you know, as long as when they were kids playing Pokemon. When I thought that Sage is unbelievably competitive, unbelievably critical, incredibly good at the game, and so playing with Sage or sort of leaning over and looking for his feedback can be a really difficult thing. I played duos with Sage a couple of weeks ago, and it ended up becoming him playing on my computer, my playing on a tablet, him yelling at me for not doing the stuff. And at some point, I eventually just handed the tablet to him, and he played duos by himself. And it went really, really well with him playing both sides of the board. It did not go nearly as well with me attempting to hold up one end of that partnership. It's just, that's how we used to play Overwatch once in a while together, and I would queue up with them on a team, and boy, I can tell you, there's nothing worse than going 1v1 against someone that you're supposed to have huge advantage against and yeah, that would happen a couple of times, and darned if he isn't very, very. They're here, they're available. They don't want Dad being too intimately connected with the game. We do chat about it a bit. They're fine with that, but I think they're still worried that I'm going to go do a video. So they're nervous.
Oh, because it has been known to happen. So have you ever had ideas or design improvements for the game, or maybe card ideas that you've suggested at the dinner table that possibly might have made it into the game, even if your kids won't admit it?
100%. And they never will. And I've had ideas. I had a Wild West expansion plotted out years before you ever saw. I had a time travel expansion that I had actually been discussing and doing like mock cards on my own that I would sort of put together just to sort of show them and see what they thought. Long before they ever started work on what everybody got to see. And I'm sure there are cards here and there. The kids never come up and say, hey, that idea you came up with, we decided to do this card for it. Or no, it's there. It creeps in. I'm sure it's a coincidence anytime I've ever suggested a specific card that turned up or a change to a card that they've been working on. But no, I don't think you'll ever get that publicly announced, but yeah, I genuinely, I have come up with things that either it's just an unbelievable coincidence that they did sets or cards that were, something I had already discussed and talked to him about. And of course, when I talked to him about it, it was an idiotic idea. Oh, that's ridiculous. You can't do that. That's stupid. But it's good to see them maybe pick up something here and there. Maybe I've contributed a little bit. I contributed them. Here you go. I've given my children, I've offered my DNA for future of gaming at Activision Blizzard. I've done something.
And they've missed an opportunity because they probably could have blamed things like the most recent quests on you. Oh, that was my dad's idea. But, what can you do?
No, the blame for that is solidly on certain aspects of the design process that I guess I won't out publicly.
Smart. So, Pylet, do we have any news this week?
We do have some news. So we had the World Championships this weekend. I did not get a chance to watch any of this, so I don't know if any of you three did and have anything that you want to chime in. But Zhao Ti is the winner and the world champion for this year, winning over, I just had it and I closed out of it. Definition, I think. Yes, over Definition in the final. Popular decks are kind of what we would expect. Discover Hunter, Controlled Death Knight, Quest Warrior, Hagatha, mid-range, whatever you want to call it, Shaman, all had over 10 players bring it. Cycle Rogue was at 9. And then a few odds and ends of what they called Copy Druid, which is the Ajara Druid that people have been playing. A couple Dragon Warriors, 2 Egglocks, and 1 Protoss Rogue. So like I said, I didn't get a chance to watch much of it.
It was fun. I got to watch some. It was fun. It was really nice to see esports getting this level of support again. My daughter made a couple match return to casting that TJ invited her to do, and that was really fun to see. She got to do a series with Edelweiss. She got to do a series, I think, with Raven. And that was really fun. I think if you sort of watched enough or caught the summaries of some of it, I think Pocket Train had some of the worst draws anybody has ever had in the game, and really, really had a rough time. I think we also had one dramatic misplay that ended up with someone leaving the scene, which that's a rough thing to see.
Yes.
But it was really good to see. After it was only a few years ago that it looked like Blizzard was going to pull the plug on any sort of esports other than a token offering here and there, and seeing an actual world championship with $100,000 first prize and this level of support, and knowing that next year it's going to actually be live, that's really fantastic.
Yeah, I only caught a few matches, but they were all really, really good. Obviously, you have some of the best players in the world, and it's always interesting after the Masters when you start seeing some of these decks on ladder and people don't know how to play them, or they don't realize that, hey, maybe it was good for a conquest lineup. It's not necessarily good when you can't ban Shaman or anything like that. So hopefully we can take advantage of that over the next few days. But it really was sad to see Pocket Train kind of get hit, and it was really also kind of sad to see no Americans in the tournament. But at least we had McBannerface was also brought in as a caster, and he did a really, really good job. And all the casters are great. So I really enjoyed the few games that I did get to watch were very entertaining. Anything else, Pylet? Or
so part of the broadcast was announcing the esports for next year. So we knew that the announcement was coming because we were told that Worlds was happening at BlizzCon. So it's just like, there's something. Let's find out what it is. And they are actually expanding, which is very good news. We're going back to 3 Masters tours. So we'll have a winter, spring, and summer season, and that is starting in January. So right away, the January, February will be the first season for an April Masters Tour, then March and April season for a June Masters Tour, May and June for summer, into an August Masters Tour, leading up to Worlds at BlizzCon in September, which will be live. They are keeping the qualification very similar to where you have points for ladder finishes, but they are expanding some of the open qualifiers. They're doing more of those, and they're doing what they're calling a playoff blitz weekend, where they'll have more shorter open tournaments where the winners will qualify into the playoffs, which are we had this year to kind of qualify into those. So you have all your ladder finishes, and then whatever number of spots qualify into the Masters Tour through the playoffs. And they did officially announce that those playoff tournaments will be official broadcasts this year. We got, I think, at least one of those, if not a couple, this year, but they were very last minute decisions of people saying, hey, we should broadcast this, and they got it going quick enough to do it, but didn't have drops. They have said that those are going to be official things this upcoming year, which is awesome.
And the prize pool for the World Championship is 500,000. So that's not that's just not pocket money. That's decent money. So hopefully it goes pretty well. I'm looking forward to it. I also like that they have a lot more opens and a lot more chances, because one of the things I used to love about Hearthstone esports early on, before Grandmasters and all that, was you had that feeling that anyone could qualify. You could catch a good run of cards. You could find that couple decks and just really kind of take off and maybe find your way in there out of nowhere. And that hasn't quite been the same when it's been the last few years that you have to grind out these top 10 ladder finishes and do it consistently. And most people can't do that. It takes a person that has the time, the stamina, and probably no real job outside of playing Hearthstone in order for that to be accomplished. So it's very difficult. And now that we have these opens again, and now that they're opening it back up, they've done a really good job over the last couple years. And the fact that we're getting it now at a BlizzCon, I think, is just fantastic.
I think it is interesting that there is so much focus on ladder finishes for points, and I'm very glad that they're opening this up, because there's no way in client for anybody to prepare in any way, shape, or form for any tournament. It's almost like if there were a mode within the world of Hearthstone, specifically within the client, that was made to assist in tournaments in some way, shape, or form, that could prepare people and give them an other opportunity outside of just ladder to maybe hone their skills in some way, shape, or form.
No one ever said tournament mode. No one ever mentioned this. These are not the modes you're looking for. Move on. It is a disappointing. It is disappointing they've never been able to figure out how to make that work.
But
it is.
It does make sense, because they had to have the developing time to make things like Twist and Mercenaries and duos.
All of which fabulous game modes. I played Twist in the other years where they had twists, and that was very exciting times. It didn't happen in 2025, but maybe it'll happen in 2026.
Well, the thing is, we haven't even gotten any kind of announcement on it. They haven't killed it. It's kind of like, remember how Hearthstone was in beta for like 8 years before they took the beta tag off? Now it's like they have not said that Twist is dead. There's still a button. There's still people got ranks on it. They just kind of like,
we'll get to the positivity that I'm going to be the voice of positivity here. Hold on to because let's be honest, they pulled the plug on esports. They pulled the plug on BlizzCon. They basically said, we're not making money on these events. And I'm sitting here going, wait, don't you understand that this is like advertising? You don't run a commercial and then complain that the commercial itself costs you money. You look at how it impacts the product itself and the people it brings to you, and the revenue, since you've got to figure that in, to how it affects everything. Instead, it was, oh no, BlizzCon doesn't make money. And I mean, how much did you make on BlizzCon? What was it, a big moneymaker? Did you pocket a lot of money?
Oh, I would say I lost probably about $500 to $1,000 on that bad boy.
So you'll never do it again, because once you lose money, there's no point.
Correct.
That's what I'm talking about. We went from no BlizzCon, no esports, no anything, and what everybody at the time, I think, anticipated that this was just sort of the way it was going to be, and a lot of people predicting that this was like a death knell to the game, that this is just a sign that it's falling apart. They're not going to support it. There's nothing going on, so they're going to pull the plug. You just wait. And to see things turn this dramatically is unbelievably positive. And honestly, that's something you don't get to say too often. It wasn't that many expansions ago that everybody was miserable and unhappy and complaining about what the heck are you guys doing and why is it like this and when are you going to fix it. So seeing things change just with the current expansion and with the way things have been supported with esports is really
agreed, because we've gone, and we can jump. Pylet, do we have any other news? Because we're kind of blending into our main topic here.
No, I was going to chime in, but now
I'm an unstructured individual. You're just going to have to live.
It's okay. I made very unstructured show notes because I figured we'd just vibe our way through most of the night anyways. It felt fitting for this
cool
night.
to vibe.
With JustAGuy
I don't vibe. Vibe is generations.
But I was going to chime in off of what Stormraige was talking about with the lack of tournament mode. They are putting more emphasis on the play-in stuff and the playoffs for numbers. But the more I read it, the more I don't understand which number is supposed to be which. So I'm just going to read it as it says, and maybe someone else will understand it better than I do. So each season, top 4 players from each region will qualify for their respective Masters Tour Championship, up from 2 in 2025. And then top competitive point earners from each region, along with the global top point earner, will also secure a spot. Aren't those the same? Aren't the top earners and the top 4 players the same thing? I'm very confused.
No. You see, one is the best players. The other is the best point getters. So they're very different. They're extreme. I don't know how they could have possibly made that any more clear there, Pylet.
So
I just want Fireside Gatherings to come back. That's all I care.
Yes.
We don't do that anymore.
Oh.
I just want a little group of hobbyists who aren't competitive, who just want to get together and hang out and have them toss prizes.
I would say that people coming to Fireside Gatherings aren't necessarily not competitive.
You can be more casual and show up at an event like that than you would at an open tournament.
Sure.
Pylet, I've read through that sentence a dozen times. I still have no idea what the difference is.
Maybe they explained it better on stream. Go find, I think it was Thursday that they announced it. Maybe they explained it better there. I don't understand what the difference is, but it does seem like they're putting more emphasis from the ladder qualifying to the playoff qualifying and all of that, maybe. And they did specify for Worlds, the top 3 from each Masters Tour are going. So now there will be a 3rd place match that actually matters.
And they won't
Maybe
play the first place match.
One of the better performing people who just play casual. that would be a good way of bringing somebody in.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. So we've kind of talked around this a little bit. So our main topic is today we're going to talk about the state of the game a little bit. Stormraige, what are your current thoughts on just the state of the game?
I think it's overall in a pretty good state. I would say good, not great overall. I think that there's a lot of meta that's kind of been settled at this point, and we won't get any sort of significant updates as the team will go on a well-deserved holiday break, and they work on different projects in the end of the year, so don't expect any updates. There are some good variety of decks. I don't think there's any massive power outliers, so those are all good. My only thing is that I have seen so many cards so many times. Like if I have to see another Elise on turn 4 into Ziliax on turn 8, I don't know what else to do. They've nerfed Ziliax a bajillion times. Let's just add everything 1 mana. increase every Zilliax module by 1 mana, remove 1 keyword chosen at random from each module, and maybe finally it'll be dead for real. I don't think that it'll ever die because that card is impossibly good. But I think overall, there's some very fun things. I'd love to see a bit more variety and a bit less focus on these classic neutral legendaries that have been around for so long and have seen play for so long. But outside of that, I think that there is a lot of fun to be had in the game.
I think they've actually gotten away from that too. The last expansion, especially, didn't have any real core legendaries from the neutral set that has really kind of found its way into every deck, even if we've wanted to. And I think I saw JustAGuy kind of smirking there because I believe his daughter designed Zilliax, right?
I'm sorry?
Who's to say?
I can tell you that Zilliax rotates out in March. So here you go. I think we've got a final solution to anyone who's sick of seeing that card in every match.
Oh, I can't wait. I cannot wait for rotation.
I think that's about the safest guess of what will not be in core.
If it makes its way to core, I'm done.
If the rotation came April 1st,
yes,
I can see that being it. If it came, then I could see it make perfect sense.
No, I don't even think you could do that on April 1st because I think that would probably cause riots.
My gosh.
And as strong as that card is, I think it was a cool card. Like the concept of it was really cool.
A great designed card.
Yes.
Balance is a different issue. But I mean, you've got to understand that one of the challenges, and I'm sure it's exactly the same in any of these digital card games, you've been around so long. How do you release a new set? Have it be impactful, have it be interesting, have it be something that obviously, as far as the company is concerned, they want you to purchase the bundles and get the card and care about playing with the new card. But how do you make those somehow stand out from what everybody's been playing? So it's difficult to not constantly have power creep become an issue. It's difficult where when they scale back and they apparently make more of an actual intent to try to bring the power level down, then you end up with a bunch of really, really crappy cards and nobody's happy about that. Oh, look at all these great new expansion cards and oh, these all suck. Did you intentionally make? Yeah, we intentionally wanted these to be bad. Did you really? Because that seems like an odd way to design too. I think you might not want to speak for everybody when you say you intentionally wanted these quests to be bad. I think you need to talk for yourself. And that was a small faction. Anyway, that's the problem. How do you? I've always cited that that there are very, very repetitive ways to do this. You can release, like in Marvel Snap, fewer cards to deal with. You release OP cards. The current cards are always OP. You end up with stuff that you have to get. You've got to either buy it, you've got to pay for the season pass. You've got to get these cards because you will not be competitive unless you have them. And then they've been out for a while and they go, oh, gee, we didn't realize these cards were quite as OP and we're seeing them all the time and they're really skewing the game. And then they nerf the hell out of it. And then you just rinse and repeat. And that's the way it is everything. So how do you get the monetization to work? You make sure that they have to get the cards if they want to play the game. And then how do you get the balance to work? You completely undo the cards to the point where you're not just making them cost a little more or you're, sort of balancing the effects. That they've redesigned cards into things that never looked like what the card originally was designed to be in the first place. So, I mean, that's a way to do it too. But can you imagine if, you got the expansion, they rotate, the next expansion's coming, and then all these cards that you were playing that you spent all this money for suddenly got neutered so bad that they just weren't effective at all. You'd be pissed about that too. So it's a real challenge to try and figure out how to find. And the longer the game's been around, the more cards are out there, the more difficult it is to try and.
And that's the thing, right? It's we always acknowledge how hard it is to design cards. None of us could really do it, although we'll try later. interesting thing is they have tools that like we thought they would use more. Like we have this core set, and they said, "Hey, we'll rotate cards in and out of core when we." And I thought that was going to be a great way to kind of stir up things. Maybe even like in a balance patch, say, "Hey, we're taking Bran out of the core set, and we're throwing these things in." That's something you could do in the middle of any balance patch, or you could do it hot swap things, or maybe add new cards that might enable certain archetypes or whatnot. They don't do that, and that boggles my mind still. And while we all say, yes, it is hard to figure out how to balance these sets to make sure that we're buying the new cards, and they're impactful, and we want to play them at least in conjunction with the older decks, and we still want the older decks around, but we still want newer decks. That's what's fun. That's what brings people back. That's what keeps people engaged in the game, because it's not the same meta that we had last month or 3 months ago or whatever like that. We've been around for 11 years.
Part of the answer to your question, why don't they, is
no.
What?
Oh,
why are they not sort of doing more proactive balancing and changes and rotating? I think a lot of it is resource. I think a lot of it is you're not always seeing how thin the team is and how overworked and overstretched they are with everything they're doing. They're doing 3 expansions a year. They wanted 4. And that was planned at one point, until they realized that apparently somebody who had some measure of rational thought figured out that that was going to be a deal breaker. That was going to be. So, they're doing so much, and trying to juggle all the rest of it is always a challenge, and they are overworked and overstressed frequently, and it's something that you don't see when you're out there. So that is part of it. I think there's also some reluctance, I think, to be too heavy-handed with some of the changes. I think you've seen some balance patches that just looked like somebody took 50 cards and threw them at a wall and went, let's see if this fixes it. And sometimes that's not the best way to do it. So, you want measured, you want thoughtful, you want some sort of ability to predict that, hopefully these are going to actually affect the changes that you want to see, and not just trying to sort of, give a response to the people that are complaining. Because I hate to tell you, but there's always going to be people complaining.
Oh, of course there is. And I think that even if we don't like decks, or we want to see decks go away, we don't necessarily want, like, there's people that enjoy playing those decks, and there's people that want those decks to stay or thrive. We just don't want to see the same 5 cards killing us. We don't want to see Sire Denathrius kill us every game.
My definition of a healthy meta has always been dictated by the number of different decks you see getting viable play. That's what, to me, I get bored very easily. And, I punish decks. If I lose with a deck, I delete the deck and I play another one. And it teaches the decks a lesson so that they hopefully do a better job next time.
But at this point, do you have any decks left, JustAGuy?
No, not really. I actually, you know what? I did have to change. I did play the game originally on insanity mode, where I would delete my account if I lost the game, and then just have to create a new one. But that just took up so much. But the more decks, they can be over. But if you had 10 different, somewhat overpowered decks that you could still be competitive with and play and had fun with, that's a really good, healthy state for them.
And that's one thing I always hated when these create, especially this year has come a lot. Oh, Hearthstone's unplayable. A lot of times, Hearthstone's been very playable. We have had like right now, what did we say last week? We have like 17 decks right now that are tier 1 or tier 2. It is very playable. Yeah. You can complain that Hearthstone's boring. You can complain that I have nothing new to do. You can complain about a million other things. You can complain about 158 other things. But Hearthstone is very playable right now. And Daniel, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I'd agree. I think that Hearthstone is very playable. I think that there's just a certain number of player base and a certain type of player base. And it's honestly people like me that if there's not a deck that they want to be good being good, that it's a bad meta. Like for me, my gut reaction is if there's not an aggressive deck that is viable and powerful and hits face, I think that it's a bad meta. And people will be like, no, that's wrong, which they're correct. That is a bad way to have that metric. But anytime that there's a slower meta or a meta that revolves around more control or combo, I am so far out. And I think right now there's a good combination of everything. There's just nothing that is super push. And some of it's somewhat familiar. I think that it is just all around good. It's well balanced. Makes a lot of sense that people are enjoying it. And I think it is a good time to come back if you haven't played in a while. There's just also no single deck that is just absolutely busted right now.
What are your thoughts, Pylet?
Yeah, I think gonna kind of bounce around a little bit here of different things that were said. Going back to the card design, it's really easy to design cards that are going to be inoffensive. Just those 50% middle of the road, decent cards that no one's going to complain about. To where, thinking back to where it did get nerfed, but like Pozic, I think was a great example. We've talked about that before. Mancrit got nerfed, but they were solid cards, not overly offensive, but they're just good neutral cards that you could throw in as a curve filler into deck. And it's really easy to design kind of cards like that. It's much more difficult when you're taking chances with design. Ziliax was a huge, idea to where, it's been nerfed however many times. Thinking this was back before I played, but when you've got stuff that, changes the rules of the game, Ganon Baku completely changes, the rules that was innovative, but obviously broke the game because they rotated early. Or on the flip side, a lot of the quests from last expansion were really unique in how they created the conditions and what they did, but it's a lot harder to predict where that's going to fall. And now we know more about where they got pushed to, but it's still more of a risk. And I think that's really hard to balance out because you want innovation, but you want stuff to land, and those don't always match up together. It's very, very difficult. As far as the current state of the game, if you're not, overly focused in on places that focus in on the discourse, it's fine. Like Stormraige said, it's not great, but it's good. It's fine. And I think if you get away from these, places that become echo chambers of just kind of this constant thing, then you find that, Tito, you brought up, and I was just looking at it again, there are like 17 decks that are tier 2 right now, and a ton of them in Diamond through Legend since the last patch have less than 35,000 games on HS Replay, which is very significant. No one's playing them, but they are fine decks like Quest Hunter, like Face Hunter's up there, Peddler DH is up there, different versions of aggro decks. The problem is it's a lot of stuff that we've seen, which is why people don't want to play them. But that's a whole different discussion. So if you're looking strictly at numbers, which it feels like the current balance kind of is, then it does look fine. Popularity wise, very different story, which we talked about last week. So I think depending on where you're looking and what you're looking for, are you looking for, do I have options to play? Yes, this is fine meta. Am I going to play different decks all the time when I'm queuing? Slightly different story.
Interesting, if I can interject.
Yeah.
Talking to the kids about design, there's a couple of philosophies depending on how they go about it with expansions. A lot of times they design a deck. They're looking to put together an idea. They've got a keyword they're working with, or they've got certain legendaries they're looking to support. So they want to obviously make sure that these things don't show up sort of naked without, the supporting cards that may not already exist in order. Then there's also the philosophy where it's like, if you design a good card, it'll be a good card potentially in a lot of different decks.
Mm-hmm.
And the community will certainly figure out how to get the most mileage out of whatever you introduce in. So there are differences with the way they often go about it. Sometimes I think they do too much design for an end goal deck that they want to put together that works with the theme, that works with the expansion. And sometimes I think that this is just a good card. Let's just design and release this good card. But then that's also how you get Celiacs. It's like, oh, look, this is a really good card. It'll be in all kinds of decks. Isn't that a positive? Everybody can use this in all these different decks. No, apparently Stormraige is still upset. So you can't make people happy even.
Well, what you got to do that's a good idea, but maybe what they have to do, like I felt like this set right now has a lot of good cards as opposed to just, good packages or deck themes. And maybe the way to go about it is to have more of those good cards that can just be good as class cards. So you won't see them in 50% of the games you play. You'll see them in maybe 100% of the mage games you play, but that's okay. That's going to be like 10% or whatever. So the thing that I really am hoping for, and obviously we are all in the know. We talk to people that are on the development team, and we talk to the parents of people on the development team, and
interviewing
whatnot.
devs
We know
is not that great. It's really tedious. They say mean things to you. I'm sorry. No, maybe that's just me.
That is just you. So we know they're thin. We know that for some reason, Microsoft, Blizzard, whoever, are not willing to invest the money into the developers so they can get more money from this game. Whatever.
What reason might that be?
But what I am hoping for is that we've been doing this for 11 years now. And this is like probably the third time that we've kind of tried to reduce power level in a way to kind of adjust for power creep. It's kind of like when they do the number crunch in Warcraft. And this year did not go well. This year went very, very poorly in regards to that. I don't think any set was widely received as positive. It took away, like, a lot of the themes were great. We were really excited about a lot of the themes and a lot of the focus of what the expansions were. But I'm hoping that we pick up, like, how do we do what went wrong and how do we do it better next time? What lessons can we learn so that when we need to realign the power level, how can we do it better and not just do the same thing in 2027 or 2028 where we have to have a whole gear that no one really is happy with the cards coming out and we end up in the same situation again? Can we learn lessons from what happened this year going forward?
Depends on who you are hoping can learn the lesson. I think at some point you're dealing with, look, we've all seen decisions and choices that were made that confused the hell out of us, that you're trying to figure out why you would do this and what they were thinking. And that happens a lot. And I think we often sort of paint the picture of the team as sort of like this cohesive entity, and it could not be farther from the truth. So I think it's confusing that you've got developers that think one thing and are obviously fans of the game and they want to see the game be healthy. And then you're seeing a certain element of financial decisions that are necessary for the game. You can't just have, I own a computer store. I've owned a computer store since I opened it in 1996. I got an email from somebody a week or so ago that I shared with some social Discord groups. Somebody messaged me through my store's website and asked me a question about a part for a 20-year-old laptop, which is kind of odd, and then said, do you have any free laptops? I couldn't figure out how to make a business model work where we just gave away free laptops. It would be great. I'd be so popular for the 15 minutes that I could actually sustain being in business. So, I mean, there's got to be an obvious practical factor that works into how the game is developed, how it's monetized. Sometimes I don't see it no matter how hard I try. And I think it's confusing when negative things happen and they don't seem to react the way we like. I think it's confusing when the one person who was trying to explain things to the community, who overworked himself, was doing 3 different jobs and couldn't have been a more ideal human being suited for the role, somehow doesn't continue with his. It's weird. You don't want to keep somebody who was manufactured by the gods to do this position for you better than, and you didn't want. So I don't understand. I don't. And I think you have to at some level, you have to realize that there is the team, there is management working with the team, and then there's a whole layer above it of dark hooded individuals that have far too much say in what seems to be going on, and none of us will ever know exactly who they are or why they make the decision. So there you go. That's perfect, Tito.
Yeah, there's a lot that we don't see. Like even we know just from different conversations and talking to you guys about it, to where we know kind of we've heard bits and pieces of how they kind of split up the work, but you never hear when people are switching roles, or hey, this person is really focused because they're leading this expansion, so they're not doing this thing as much anymore, which means now it's on these people. And you don't see those things, to where if it switches who is mainly focused or making the decisions on final design and balance, we're gonna see that in the results and not know that that's why that happened. And that's really hard from just watching from the outside.
Part of what we're talking about is sort of the game, state of the game currently, but also where the game had been and where we think the game is going to go. You remember that there used to be a lot more visibility and personal individuals that were engaged in social media, that were interacting with people in the community, that would answer questions, that would at least give a face to something. And that hasn't been the case for some time. Obviously, there used to be a game director who was very charismatic and very personable, and you don't find somebody like that often. So that expecting that to be the norm is an impossibility. But I think a lot of the developers were willing to be engaged and trying. But at some point, when things sort of aren't supported internally, and when you don't have sort of a filter between backlash at times, the negativity that the community is going to want to target at somebody, the more visible you are, the more likely you are to be that target. And at that point, you're like, okay, why would I do this? I'm not getting the support internally. I'm not seeing somebody with a higher pay grade who you would think their position would actually entail a certain amount of interaction with the community and the person to be more of a face when it comes to explaining and discussing this. When it comes to who was doing it, no, it was far more than what you should have asked them to do. And that's when you end up with this sort of faceless hosts here and there that just sort of give you some ideas. It's sad, because I'd certainly like to see more personal engagement involved, but I can understand why they don't.
Absolutely, and you can definitely understand why we don't hear from people that we used to hear from. Even the ones that are on the team that we used to hear from quite often are now kind of just pulled back, and you accept it. But Daniel, what now that we're coming into the end of the year, we're going to be coming with a new mini set, so that's going to be some of the same stuff that we've been dealing with. But April's coming around. Everyone always says, okay, we're coming to rotation. Things have got to be different. What are your hopes for 2026 for Hearthstone? Like, what would make you more engaged at Standard? What would make you happier as a podcaster? Like, what would you like to see?
I'd be interested if they released, I don't know, like a mechanic that I used to really engage with. Let's say, hypothetically, I don't know, just to name a mechanic I haven't seen in a decade, quests. And then they decided to make those quests good. That would bring me back into the game pretty fast. Now, I know that recently the design has instead been what if quests but bad all the time. And so it would be a pretty revolutionary change. But that would certainly help for me personally. I'm obviously being a bit of a jerk on this, but like, I really love those styles of deck. I love those decks where it is, you have a specific end goal. When you reach that end goal, you get this reward. This reward will lead you down XYZ. Like, some of my favorite decks of all time are almost all quests. Quest Rogue, the original Quest Rogue, was one of my favorite decks of all time. I know that it got a lot of frustration, but both Time Warp Mage and Self Damage Warlock Quest and like Quest Shaman, like there have been so many of my all-time favorite decks that were quests, because I really like that style of play X thing, get X reward. This is now how you play the game. And the counterplay is either get under them before they finish their quest, or find a way to nullify their quest reward in some significant way. And there's just it's one of my favorite aspects of deck building within the Hearthstone. And boy howdy, if they decided to bring that back in a playable manner, I'd be all over it.
How about yourself, Pylet? What would you like to see in 2026?
I think one of my biggest issues with this year that I was gonna say, and then we kind of bounced on because we went a bunch of different directions. Thing that I think frustrated me the most with them trying to lower the power level is I didn't feel like they attacked this overall kind of archetypes the same way. Like I felt like we went really hard after combo, and then we went really hard after aggro, and control just went on as it could for so long, to where all these control tools got really pushed to compete with the push aggro and combo, and then those were gone, and now we had 100 armor with nothing that was coming close anyways. To where if we're gonna do something like that, can we chip away equally? Bring all those types down at the same time, because then it does feel like we're bringing down all the power, not just saying this type of deck doesn't exist.
How about yourself, Steve? What do you want to see for 2026?
Progress. I want to see movement in a positive direction that continues, hopefully, throughout the year. Doesn't have to be unbelievably dramatic, just something that seems like the positive vibe is something that they care about and that it moves in. I think that if they, I mean, part of it, like I mentioned, was resource. You know that Leo Robles Gonzalez moved from the Hearthstone team to Overwatch. That was a huge somebody who had been integral to so many sets in the game, and just a really good guy to have there to work with. So it's difficult to know, because I complained forever that the things were overstretched, and it's a real slow reaction curve, it seems, with the company when it comes to filling those. They seem real slow to announce the position. Then the hiring process takes nearly 6 years, start to finish. That's an dramatization. But I mean, just sort of the process of bringing somebody on and actually making a decision that you're going to hire them is great. That takes far too long. And then that person hits the ground, and depending on who they are, it may be months and months and months and months until that person actually is able to be able to contribute. So it's difficult when you've got moving pieces and people leaving, like happens with most positions, most jobs. So I just want to see some cohesiveness. I want to see some positive movement. I want to see the group that's there work together and grow. And I know recently they hired Bionic, which was actually somebody that Sage had referred, because he had seen the creation work, the content that he had put together. He was doing his own expansions. He was doing everything, theming and all the cards and all the mechanics and everything, and was doing really good all by himself. So somebody who has that capability was great, and I'm really excited to be on the team now. People like that who can work together and be good people to work with. You can have some really talented individuals that you don't want to be in the same room with. That happens at a lot of jobs too. So I just want to see positivity. I want to see them having more fun. I want to see them having, I've heard that games are supposed to be fun. I've heard that before. Game design, while a job, should still be fun. It's a game. It's like complaining about playing baseball. Yes, I understand there are pressures and stress and all kinds of other aspects that you don't necessarily understand, but it's still supposed to be, at its heart. That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see more fun from the team, more fun that you can see outside and enjoy, and the community can pull that off. That's what I'd like to see. I know there's going to be ups and downs. You're going to have expansions that don't hit as well as others. You're going to have cards that, and that's fine. I think the biggest frustration with the community is often when they feel like nobody's listening. We're unhappy. I understand there are some people who are going to scream loudly over very tiny things because you get attention that way. But when the community as a whole is unhappy with certain things and has attempted to politely express themselves for a long enough period of time, they'd like some response. And when you don't get that, when you don't have the person who shows up in a video or personally writes a response to what's going on and the things that have been upsetting you, and you get something signed off that just says, the team or developers or whatever, you get frustrated. And that's something I'd like to see become a distant memory as well. So hopefully positive.
Yep, and I agree. I would like to see more communication as well. Like you were just saying, that is something I feel like we're definitely missing this last year, especially with all the, like, they're not going to justify that it costs $158 to get a pet, which they stopped giving us free boards for. They were supposed to like, oh no, hey, you're only gonna get one board a year, but you're gonna get pets. It's gonna be great. And I'm even okay. It's predatory. Don't get me wrong, but I'd be even okay with what they're doing with the Darkmoon Fair if there were other ways to get pets. Like, hey, you complete all the achievements for the expansion, you get the pet for the expansion. If you do X, or you I don't know, you have cheaper pets, have other things, have other ways to get the pets. Like, I would have been like, okay, fine, this thing is horrible, but at least it's not the only way to get a pet in your life. And because they hyped it up so much, like, this is going to be, oh, we stopped working on things, but pets are coming, you're going to love it. Yes, the pets are kind of fun. Don't love how you have to get them. I'd like to see more packages that are not necessarily like 8 cards, and if it misses, it misses. And you can't play that class, or that class is uninteresting. I like when we had like relics for Demon Hunter. I like when we had rifts for Warrior. And don't be afraid to make them too strong, or adjust them. Those were things that felt like they had 3-4 card package, maybe a payoff, and they could adjust them up or down as needed and keep them playable at a level that doesn't feel bad. And I like to see what they did with this set as far as keeping the more powerful legendaries in classes. And let's not have Sire Denathrius, which again, awesome set. We even did a radio drama thanks to Daniel. That was super fun for the theming of the set. But it got so tiring seeing Sire Denathrius in every damn deck. So I'd like to see us move away from things like that. And I want them to learn lessons on what not to do. Like, hey, let's not have neutral cards that can generate armor for every class, because that goes poorly when Demon Hunter can get 158 armor, 338 armor, and now we have like this thing. Like, that's not their theme. That's not what they're supposed to be doing. That's not any of their class cards. So why are we doing it with the neutral cards? And I get neutral cards are hard to design, but like, let's at least learn some of these lessons. So, but I'm excited. We've suffered through this year of lowering the power level. I'm hoping that we take advantage of it, and that next year is going to be exciting. And does anybody have? We still have one more thing to do, and I know Daniel. I know you're used to only having podcasts that last an hour, so I apologize. And you already did one tonight, so
yeah,
I'm sure this is a
it's
lot for you.
past my nap time and past my interact with people time. So my energy is, I'm holding on. I've got some caffeine. I've got a Diet Coke here. I'm probably going to grab a Diet Dr. Pepper here in just a second. I'm doing my best. I'm surviving over here in the very difficult, harsh world of podcasting for more than an hour.
Awesome. So what if we were design, so we've talked about how hard designing is. So we're going to do like a brief little design session. I had a bigger idea for this, but I think we're just going to keep it very, very simple. Daniel, if you could design one of the sets coming up, and just at a very, very high level, like what would you have for a theme, and what would be maybe some keywords or some things that might be interesting for it? What would sell you on a set?
I would call the set dungeon delve. Maybe not that exact word, but I would love to genuinely have a set that is each class takes on a specific dungeon in classic WoW. And so, like, Mage has spells and minions related to Gnomergon. Rogue has spells and minions related to Deadmines. Admittedly, we've already had that. But the idea of like each class getting its own dungeon or being a part of a party in some way, shape, or form, like the not Heroes of Might and Magic, different game. Magic the Gathering had a set a while ago where you could have like different classes as cards that would, like, you'd have a cleric or a mage, things of that nature. And I just like the idea of party composition or going back to the dungeons of old school classic WoW. And then maybe it would also come with it maybe some solo adventures, because we haven't had a dungeon run style mode since 2019, and it is, I think, some of the best content that Hearthstone has ever produced. So I would do classic dungeons in WoW, assign each class a specific dungeon identity, and then bring back solo content.
All right, Pilot, if you had any ideas for a theme, and I know you were kind of like, I don't know what I'm gonna do for this, I'm not as creative, but if you could design a set, what would it look like?
I've just never played WoW, so I have nothing to base off of. So, but I will, kind of tagging on what Stormraige said at the end. One of the favorite years that I've played was the Mercenaries year, where we had the year-long story and we got the different versions of the card as we went through the year. And we haven't had something like that since. I know that was very mixed in how it was received, because people are like, okay, now we've seen the same kind of take on these characters, but is a really cool thing that hasn't been done now for however many years. I think that would be something fun to do, because they did it that year with, Baron, Stormwind, and Alterac Valley, and then the Rise of Shadows, Saviors of Uldum, Descent to Dragons year also had something like that. So now it's been 3 years since we've done that. I'd like to see something like that again.
I like that idea, and I think that you could take the same idea and maybe not give us the same characters each expansion with like a different, because we got like the little one and then the hero card and whatnot.
Yeah, and then the quest line was based off of them, and then the hero card,
right?
Which was fun.
And I really like that. The thing that frustrated with me about that whole thing was every time we got some content, it was telling the same story. So I think that if you had that idea, you could tell a story for the entire year, maybe introduce some characters in the first expansion and they go through their trials and tribulations. And then then you have maybe another set that kind of also interact, and you make the story bigger. Then by the end, you have your Descent of Dragons or kind of thing. So I think that's very cool. Steve, how about yourself? What are your thoughts? And you got to be careful.
I have to be very careful. I pitched an expansion that they should do on an evil corporation, like a board game company that is run by goblins that just make every decision for financial reasons. The stuff I enjoy, I was never a huge WoW player either. So the real lore-centric expansions that they do don't hit usually as hard with me. I really like the more fun, the more they sort of differ from the actual content that the game started with, the more enjoyable I have. So I like the stuff that's really sort of tongue in cheek and a little bit more enjoyable and center. So it depends on. I know a lot of people don't like it. They like the stuff that's sort of. I've suggested. I will tell you that one of the suggestions that I know one of my kids really pitched for an expansion a while ago that they shot down would have been phenomenal. they wanted to do sort of the slasher camp horror genre. Not dark, hardcore type stuff. Certainly more fun. And that to me would have been just absolutely fantastic. The things you could do with all the different horror movie stereotypes that you could pull into the game, that you could characterize different iconic Hearthstone characters into, the different horror icons would have been phenomenal. That to me would have been great. And apparently the general consensus was, I don't think that'll go over. That's the kind of stuff I would do if I ever, which I'll never have a say, but if I did, if anybody listened, that kind of stuff to me would be
that
more
that
fun.
sounds
The
fun.
less that would be great.
That does sound fun, and that sounds like the kind of things like so. I mentioned that Daniel, you had the idea for the radio drama, and we did that whole thing, and everybody, a bunch of people from the Blizzard community contributed voice lines, and Daniel put it all together, and it was really really fun, and having some kind of theme that would give creators like you ideas to like, hey, let's do something creative because this is fun.
Does
And I think
Natria
that
seem
would
like
be,
it was 3.5 years ago?
That's crazy. And I miss it. I miss it so much. Give me more world building.
so my thought was I haven't played WoW in like 3 years, so I'm kind of like not on the WoW anymore. I don't mainline it anymore. It feels really good to be off the WoW, but I played a lot of it. Played it for 20 years, and they've started doing this remix thing that I don't really understand. But I think that maybe we could do like a remix expansion where some of the keywords like would be keywords from the past that kind of like dark gifts are now, but maybe it's like, hey, you get a randomized, and you'd have to curate the pool obviously to make it work, but like you give cards that have randomized like 2 keywords from the past or something like that. So like remix some themes, old themes, kind of like right. I mean, obviously it's a little similar to like the time thing right now, but like you could do it in a different way. Maybe bring Medivh back and he's the DJ and he's remixing some old things or whatnot. But what I would like to see is um, obviously we would like to see a new class at some point, but what I would love to see is what I think they missed the mark on right from the beginning. Right now, if you're a warrior and you have a hero power that's like, give me 2 armor, and that's great, except that doesn't work for if I'm an enraged warrior, or if each class has a different aspect of how it's played. So I think it would be really cool if they introduced when you built a deck, you had different hero powers, kind of like duels did back in the day. But like, you could select a hero power, but it's very much themed around a class archetype that's in Warcraft. So for mage, you might have like a frostbolt, an arcane explosion, and also the fire ping. And in rage, maybe you do have that self damage thing and all that. So that way, when you're building decks, you can be a little bit more creative because the hero power can help you design a deck based on the things that you want to have happen, and not just have, yes, I'm this enraged deck and I want to hit him in the face and I want to do self damage, but I can also gain armor. It doesn't feel like it always grabs onto the right theme. So I'd love to see them really dive more into what classes can do in Warcraft. Give me the shadow hero power for a priest. Give me, a healing druid and a damage druid and whatnot. So I would like to see something like that. But just my thought. Does anybody have any final thoughts on the state of the game or maybe ideas for a future expansion before we kind of start wrapping the show up?
I think the thing that I would want most, that I will say is achievable in my brain, that I know is not achievable within the world itself, is just bigger swings on balance patches. I would love it if every single expansion came out, and you know what? It's as busted as Demon Hunter was on day 1 of release. And then you know what you do? You nerf it into the ground before the next expansion comes out. If all it is like, look, I am expecting that this expansion is going to see play during this expansion window, then you know what? If you like these cards, now is the time to play it. I would be way more engaged. The problem is that every time that you nerf a card, that you're going to have to be able to give dust refunds, and they're not going to want to do that. Especially at like high rates. Like I'm thinking just bust every single class legendary, bust every class card. The neutrals can stay bad, that's fine. But like I would love to see on expansion release cards just being busted and then nerf them later.
Yeah, that makes a lot. That's kind of like that's the snap model, right? Yeah, that's like, hey, release a card. It's really good. It's snap. It costs you $100 to try to get to it, and then when it's time for the new card to come out, they nerf that one to the ground, so that way everyone's playing the new deck. No, that makes sense. All right, so I got a question for everybody, including Pylet. Normally we ask a question like, "What's your favorite dessert?" But today I want to know what your New Year's resolution is, if you believe in such a thing, for either inside of Hearthstone or outside of Hearthstone or both. Pylet, why don't you go first?
So New Year's resolution, you said? Sorry, I was distracted. Because I had a thought with your previous question also that I didn't get to, so I'm going to chime in with both of those.
Okay.
For previous, just wrapping up the last thing, I've jumped on my soapbox plenty of times the past couple of months, and I think all of us have, but I also think it's important to emphasize just as much, all of us are still playing the game. We're also taking time to talk about the game that we don't have to, and things are okay if we're still doing that. We're talking about these other things that we want to be better because we want the game to be good and we enjoy the game and we want to keep wanting to play the game. So I think it's really easy to get caught up in the negative just because that's what humans do. So I was thinking about it the other day, looking at stuff for my students where 80% of our thoughts are negative, and that's just human nature. So it's easy to get wrapped up into that, but that's where you have to find those things to hold on to. And I think that's important to where the game is good. It's still a good game that hopefully these things we've seen this year pan out. But
yeah, I mean, I love Hearthstone. And that was very well said because hopefully Alkali is listening. Anyway, continue.
But I think for me, New Year's resolution goes both with it's mainly just life in general, but then it'll also translate over to Hearthstone, is being much better organizing my time. I am not good at organizing my life and my time and using time well, and that's something that I do too many things to not do that well. So that's my resolution.
JustAGuy, how about yourself?
I don't typically do New Year's resolutions. I'm still, my goal is to make it to a new year most years. Honestly, I mean, to not be too serious, because God knows I'm just looking to move forward again. Sort of, I'm stuck a little bit. I may have had my big change, and I had a lot of plans and things that I thought, that life. I don't know a lot of people that at that point in their lives would pull the plug on everything they'd sort of, set down roots with and family and friends and whatever, and moved. I just want to see things move a little more enjoyable in my life. I'm already sort of counting down. I got so many days until I think I can retire. And at that point, then maybe things get a little easier. But I don't want to get to the point where I'm like counting out days until I expect to die, because then I won't have to deal with the crap anymore. So I'm looking for some more fun, some more enjoy. I'm in a beautiful area. Sometimes, like you said, 80%, I think for me is probably an understatement of how much negative thoughts creep through my head. It's 70 degrees out and it's December. And, I grew up in Chicago, so it's a little weird for me around the holidays not to have snow. But at the same time, you could complain about that, or you could think, well, I don't have to dig the car out when I go anywhere. I don't have to worry about, the slush and everything making your clothes soaked. I don't have to worry about, the heat bill that's dramatically high. So, I mean, a lot of it really does have to do with how you condition yourself. Do you give in to the sort of down stuff that is so easy to fall into? Or do you sort of have a conversation with yourself and try and explain, hey, you could be in so much worse place and you're doing fine and things really are okay. And that is where this type of community, and I've said that a lot of times over, that the biggest shock to me in sort of finding myself this late in my life to interact with people is that the community that has been involved with this game has almost universally been so positive and so supportive and such decent. And it's really weird that, I had a friend that I had for decades back that, we'd see each other every now and then. And he was he actually went to high school with my wife. And so we both had connections. Great guy, did a lot. He just sort of cut me like a month or so ago. I was on the phone with him, chatting up, catching up. How are things going? He says, hey, let me call you right back. That was a couple months ago. So it's kind of weird that you're like still dealing with those types of odd relationships as you get older. And I realize that, it's strange as it is, people like this on the screen that I don't unfortunately get to be in the same room with physically are really more enjoyable and more supportive and more decent than I ever would have expected to find, and certainly not in a place that I ever would have been looking for. So that to me is a real good thing. I'd like to expand that a little. I'd like to have that work well on a physical, hopefully September. We got BlizzCon coming back. The house will be open again. I'll be making meatballs, and hopefully I'll have an opportunity to hang out with people that I don't get to see in person nearly as much.
I'm coming to your house, JustAGuy.
I know
Get
you are.
ready.
I am. Not a problem. And as I've said before, it is Stormraige's fault that I have any interaction with anybody like this at all, because at some point he uttered the words, I'm going to be friends with you.
Yep, that is correct.
And I literally messaged that to me. Oh man, you're great. We're going to be friends. I'm going to be friends. And I had to go to my kids and go, do you know anything about this person? Because he's messaging me that like,
guy insane?
We're going to be friends. And it's like, I'm assuming this is some sort of Amway scam, and I'm going to get invited to join his multi-level marketing, which
I've been meaning to tell you.
Blizzlet on some level is a multi-level marketing scheme, but the $1,000 feet picks don't necessarily.
JustAGuy, I've got such a good deal for you. For just $49.99, I have a supplement that will change your life.
I've taken every damn one of them, buddy. Ain't no chance they're going to help me at this point. The blue pill, forget it.
Stormraige is now a spokesman for low T.
Thank you.
No, they have these commercials in like the South with like Frank Thomas and stuff like that.
Yes, we get Frank Thomas and the former Notre Dame quarterback, the short guy. Ditka loved him for the Bears, and he cost him playoff run.
Don't remember. Sorry.
If your wiener don't work, it don't work.
Okay. And by the way, Jeff,
podcast
if you
has
haven't
taken an incredible turn.
Jeff, if you're out there,
please. I
know.
didn't even do anything on this one.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Jeff, if you're out there, call Steve back. He misses you. Stormraige, did you get any resolutions besides maybe, I don't know, not coming on the show again?
My main resolution is that I want to embrace more weird decks. I often get frustrated when I play decks that are off meta, and then surprise, surprise, they're not as good as meta decks.
So did everybody who went to World Championships with.
Yeah.
Not. Yeah.
And I think, because I just don't like playing most of the meta decks. They're not enjoyable to me. I don't like the play pattern. If I see another control Death Knight, no thank you, is the kind way that I will say that. And I need to be more okay with, like, I'll find weird decks and play them in weird ways. And even if I don't win a lot, that's okay. I can engage with the game in a lot of different ways.
Well, I think that you are now another member of the pilot program.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for. Just start
I'm okay
sending
with this.
decks
We
to
get
both
weird-
of you.
Yeah, so what usually happens is I'm playing a deck and I'm winning and I'm doing well. And then Pilot says, "Hey, you want to try this thing with this thing?" And I say, "Yes." And then he's like, "I went 3-1." And I'm like, "Okay." And then sometimes I have success with it, but most of the time he gets back to me and he's like, "Yeah, I'm 1-7 with it now." And I'm like, "Yeah, me too." So it doesn't always go so well.
I do have some in mind,
for
though.
me, yes, absolutely. So for me, I want to keep getting better at the game and make less mistakes. And I'm not necessarily going to go and say I want to be an 11x player, which I do, but like I want to continually improve and I want to be just a better player this time next year than I was last year. And as long as I'm learning and getting better and figuring things out, I mean, I do have a podcast about getting better at Hearthstone. I hope I get better at Hearthstone. And I've made a lot of push at the end of the year here. I would say even what last 5-6 months to improve the content that I'm putting out, not only just with the podcast, because the best part about the podcast is we have amazing guests on that spend their time with us, sometimes even more than an hour, and give us insights, and they bring awesome information, and either they're funny or they're fun or they're smart or they're all three, and it's great. And I want more people to hear them since they are donating their time to us, and I want to grow the podcast. But also with all the stuff I've been doing on YouTube, we had to split bread. I split bread and butter out from Tito and as brands, and that's been a pain in the butt. And I have a lot of ideas that I come up with. I'm like, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that, and finding the time to do it has been difficult because one, like Pilot, I'm not very organized, and two, a lot of times I'll be like, yeah, I need to work on this, I need to work on that, and then I sit back down. I'm like, I'm just going to stream some Hearthstone because I want to play this game because it's fun. And so getting more organized and getting more stuff out there is kind of what I'm trying to do. But at the same point, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But we'll get there. I think I've gotten better over the last few months, and hopefully we just continue that trend. But anyway, if you'd like to help support that, you can help support by joining the show over at patreon.com/breadandbutterhs. You get access to the raw audio early. Usually you get some before and after the show chit chat. I don't censor that, so you'll hear words like wiener and stuff if you get that. But at the same point, it's fine. Usually we're not usually too disgusting. But you get access to a members channel on Discord. We've been trying to get ahead of schedule and let you know the guests that are coming on ahead of time. So if you want to ask questions or help shape the show, you have that opportunity. And if you'd like to help us in a non-financial way, you just let people know about the show. Let people like, hey, Stormraige and JustAGuy were on Bread and Butter last week. You really should listen to it. They were really funny and whatnot. So Tally was awesome in the background. You get to see a lot of the dogs and whatnot. So yeah, and if you don't want to even do that, just let us know how we're doing. If there's things you'd like to hear us add or change, or if you have, hey, I'd love to hear you guys talk about this again or whatever, because I think we've already talked about pretty much everything you can talk about in Hearthstone. But we're gonna revisit things. If you have ideas, let us know. JustAGuy, where can people find you in the world of social media?
They got to look hard lately. You can find me in Discord. I certainly am available there. Bread and Butter Discord, the Blizzlet Discord, the Squelch Discord. I try to limit myself because there's. I've been sort of figuring out whether I want to go back and start posting. I know former Twitter is sort of rounds that people avoided. So I haven't been there too much, but I still pay attention. If there's a problem, go ahead and yell my name somewhere.
He's not just a guy. He's Joe Henry.
My name and I'll appear. Doug Flutie, by the way.
Frank Thomas, I was going to suggest it was Doug Flutie, but yeah.
Their wieners don't work either. The big hurt isn't big hurting anybody lately. It's all right.
I think he's ready to come back on Blizzlet Stormraige.
Yeah, but every time I do, he's the most polite, reserved person that doesn't talk about anything dirty, and then you put him on any other podcast, and that's all he does. It's very confusing.
That's
I
fair.
like to keep people off balance. It's all I've got going for me.
I think the stuff though is going to be the first clip I take from the show and post is just a guy talking about whatever. Stormraige, where can people find you on the social medias?
I'm not really on social media. You can follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Stormraige23. Rage is spelled Raige. You can follow my podcast, Blizzlet Hearthstone. And then there is Squelch, another video game podcast. And then my Substack, stormraige.substack.com.
And we're not laughing at you. We were just laughing at Stevie in the background.
At one point, she actually popped in, and I think she grabbed 6 open bags of Doritos and walked away.
That is not far off from the truth. Yes,
I do think they had chip clips on them, so I give you
that is correct.
all the credit for that.
And I'm pretty sure at one point she came on with a unicorn hoodie, which was kind of cool. Pylet, where can people find you on the social media?
Can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky, Pylet712. That's Pylet. Like these two, I don't check, or the other two, I don't check that very often, but I am there, and remember, I have it every couple of weeks. But more often can find me on Discord at the same handle, in the Bread and Butter, Coin Concede, Blizzlet, Squelch, wherever.
And you can find me at Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, especially YouTube, because we were doing a lot of stuff for the show, both for Bread and Butter and for Tito Santana HS. Stormraige, you got anything you'd like to promote or shout out this week?
No.
Okay. Go read a Substack. It's great. JustAGuy, would you have anything you'd like to shout out or promote this week? You're on mute. You're still on mute.
And this is the wisest he's been
Positivity.
all day.
I'd like to express the nature that the holidays are not just about the Christian ethos of Christmas, that we also need to recognize Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, Festivus, Saturnalia. We need to make sure that we are as all-encompassing as we can. Because I know some people seem to have very narrow views of the world, and we don't want.
The guy who's mad that I didn't let him celebrate Kwanzaa enough. That's the subtle dig that if you're feeling it in a weird way that it might be directed at somebody, it's at me.
Just want to acknowledge the others. That's all. We're good.
Pylet, you got anything you'd like to promote or shout out this week?
I'm actually gonna get all sappy, kind of like JustAGuy did earlier when he was talking. Shout out
about
to
wieners?
about all the great communities and friends that have found through this game. Is not something that I expected when I got into it, but being able to meet so many people and constantly chat with people who I've met through the game that I can call friends is awesome. So shout out to all those communities.
Also, fun fact for people that might not know this, Pylet and I and Diego Centric and Gingersaurus all had a summer where we tried to get really, really good at Overwatch together. It didn't last long, and we did not, in fact, get good at Overwatch, but we had a great time.
We did.
And I'm going to... I played one night. I didn't help. I'm going to just shout out Doc McButt, who this is episode 150. If it wasn't for Doc McButt, I wouldn't have a show. He was the one that said, "Hey, you want to do a podcast?" And my idea for a podcast was different than his idea for a podcast, but it started this journey. And to Pylet, who took over when Doc decided to retire his mic, Daniel, who after a couple episodes, very, very nicely listened to the show and said, "Yeah, these are the things you're doing wrong, and you should fix them." And it was tough love, and it definitely, I think, helped. And after listening to that show, I never listened to myself again the same way when I was editing the podcast. Because like, oh, yep, I hear that. Yep, I hear that. Yep, I hear that. So I really appreciate it. And just coming on, just JustAGuy, Stormraige, Mad at Arms, everyone that really kind of helped get this show off the ground by being guests early on and coming on multiple times and really kind of solidifying what we do here. Because I think what we do here is fun and unique, and I think it's a positive thing in the Hearthstone community. So I'd like to keep doing it, and it wouldn't be here without you guys. So I appreciate it. But guys, I think we're toast. We'll see you.
Goodbye.
See ya.